call to order the March 17th, 2020 Plan Commission at 6:32. First up is approval of minutes. Any changes? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Oh, I said aye too, sorry. I always forget that. I don't get to vote in council. All right. Well, usually don't. All right. There's no one for non-agenda items that I'm aware of. Is there anything we want to change on the agenda? I don't know. Is there anyone here that we want to move up? Okay. All right. Then let's go to the first item. Resolution R2620. Do you want me to speak to this? Do you want to speak to this? All right, so this is the Dane County Housing Authority does a lot of work in Dane County. We're providing housing for those who are less privileged. And right now, we are the only city in Dane County that does not authorize them to operate in our city. The only village that does not authorize them is Wanakee. And when it comes to housing, frankly, I don't want to be like Wanakee. And so what they'll do primarily is they do a lot of different things, but really the main thing they do is they will invest and buy properties and then manage them themselves. And so by doing that, they have a lot of requirements for quality, plus they have the ability to take those and really screen those people really well as well. And so it's really something that I think is a great tool in our toolbox to have when you have places like North Fitchburg Road where, you know, we've got a lot of duplexes, fourplexes, maybe even eightplexes that someone owns, and that's maybe the only thing they own. And they've maybe owned it for a long time. They are looking to divest in it. They're not putting money into it. They're maybe not screening it like we want them to. There's other, spots in District 1 that are the same. And so they can come in, buy that, and they'll put a bunch of money into it, make it livable, because some of these places, really, you don't want anyone living in, even though people are. And so they will do that, and they also have a lot better screening as well. And so you know that they're not going to put up with a whole lot of monkey business like some of these other landlords might that are desperate to not lose that $500 or $800 a month, whatever that is. So that's where I really see that. They also have some bonding capabilities as we kind of develop a housing fund and some different strategies. They can help us with some bonding for other projects that we might want to do for housing. One of the things I'd like to do long term once we have the housing fund established is maybe we buy a fourplex or a couple fourplexes next to each other that are rentals, and we buy those as a city, and we work with the Dane County Housing Authority to help maybe do some kind of a bidding process to figure out what kind of builder might come in, and we want to build like 8 townhomes or row houses or something like that, and then sell those. And so they can help with some of those projects, I think, as well, because somewhere like North Fitchburg Road, maybe even Allied Drive, where we want to mix up the rentals and not have just all rentals in there, and we can sell these for, because we're buying them, we don't need to make the 20% profit that some of the other builders do, and so we're kind of underwriting that. So there's a number of good things they can do. I think it's telling that every other city is working with them and has worked with them for a long time and has great things to say. I don't know if you want to add anything I missed, Sonia.
No, just procedurally, the only brief note is that this resolution that you would make a motion on tonight would declare a need for the Housing Authority and then recommend that we authorize the Housing Authority to be able to act in Fitchburg. So you'd be making that recommendation to the council.
The one thing that the Housing Committee, we still have a new Housing Committee, they met for the first time, they approved this. They did add a slight amendment, and that might actually be in here, where we can't require them to pay taxes, but we do ask that they pay essentially the same tax rate as someone else would if they just owned it on their own. Can't require that, but they do that. They do that with other projects, and they've said that they're willing to do that for this project as well. And so we do ask that they do that with projects that they might buy. Rich?
That was my main question, the payment in lieu of taxes.
Yep.
Do we have something nailed down on that, or is this something that they might do? I mean, is this...
So we can't require it, but they've said that they will do that, and they do that for other projects.
They won't, but are they committing in writing or anything? Or is it just a, conversation over a beer that they're saying, yeah, we'll do that?
Well, I think that it's one of those that if they didn't do that, and as members of this council primarily, we could say, you know what, if you're going to start doing this and not paying your fair share, we don't want you operating here anymore. And we can, at any time, revoke this.
Oh.
So if we don't like what's happening and they're doing projects that we don't like, we can revoke this at any point in time in the future. But they don't want that, and
No,
hopefully
this
we
is
don't want that.
DCHA we're talking about. You
Yeah.
can revoke. Okay, I'm happy.
Good. Lane?
What's been Fitchburg's reluctance to have Dane County Housing Authority help on other projects in the past? Why is this the first one?
I think that there's been some misinformation out there by previous people. There's been some people afraid that they're just going to come in, and I don't really know, to be honest. I think it's a lot of misinformation and not knowing really what they do, or being afraid that they're going to come in and put in, 500 low-income housing units. Well, they're not going to do that because, one, we still could approve their projects. If they for some reason build something and they haven't built anything in a while, they still have to come and get approval to build it, and we can tell them, no, we don't want this 500 complex of all low-income housing, that type of stuff. So I don't understand it. I feel like it's been a lot of miseducation and misinformation and people not truly understanding that. I know that the Rob Dick, who runs it, does a great job, and he gets very enthusiastic. And sometimes I think people, he's maybe gone above and beyond what they, 95% of their stuff is. And he said, oh, we could even do this, and they haven't even done that. And someone, heard that and then took it a step further and got scared. And it's like, well, no, that's not 95% of what they do.
Right. Do they continue owning for long periods of time, like some of the other projects? So it's once they get it, they own it for forever in theory.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's a very specific population that they're targeting to live there, right?
I think it's people generally. It's lower income housing. People, entry level type stuff.
Sure.
Maybe it's not necessarily low income, but I think it's below the
Need
70% or 80% or 60%.
Yeah.
There's different levels, but yeah.
fair.
Yeah, Ed?
The payment in lieu that we would anticipate that they would make, is it the full property taxes or just the municipal portion?
We can only essentially do the municipal piece. We can ask them to do the other pieces, but that's kind of up to them. But it's the municipal piece that we have in here.
Oh.
The county piece, the school district pieces.
Right.
That's not a requirement, and I don't know that we can require that.
But have they paid that full amount elsewhere, or is it typically just been the municipal portion?
I'm not sure about the other pieces. I don't know about that one.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that.
It would be kind of interesting to know. When I've seen pilot taxes in the past, they have really just been the municipal piece and usually not the school district piece, but they're, if these projects are contributing to kids in the school district, then.
Actually, now that you mention it, we did talk about this, and I can't remember the funding mechanism, but there is a funding mechanism, like a state mechanism to make up that difference, actually. I can't remember what he called it at the housing committee, but it's something about, they see the kids in the district. Shoot, I wish I could remember the name of it. But there is, in the state funding and how they figure out the support that a school district gets, it gets factored into there, and so the state kind of makes up that difference, actually.
So they come out whole, and then if the pilot's being paid for municipal, we come out whole for the services as well.
It's kind of like how a TIF district would impact a school district as well.
Oh, okay.
If the taxes aren't being collected through the TID, they're still made whole through the state.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the county might lose out, but that's a small piece, 10% maybe of the bill, and they have the wheel tax to make up for that.
Sonia, one of the things I noticed, this was when I was scanning through these, looking at this, the recommendation was whether to approve or deny it's a policy of the city. What does that mean? I generally get some guidance from those recommendation pieces, right? Trying to read between the lines, but.
Right.
I don't
It
get that
is,
one.
it is something that was recommended in the housing plan.
Yeah.
it's a legislative decision that the council has to decide whether to pursue or not. And there has been, as you noted, some controversy on this issue in the past. However, our comprehensive plan, as well as the housing plan, throughout the entire text of both documents, we recommend supporting appropriate levels of affordable housing throughout the community. So this is something that would reach that goal and something that staff would support along those lines.
Fair, thanks.
Tom?
I'm assuming the city has jurisdiction over Dane County as far as regulations, as far as what's going on, or what's the story with that? As far as, when I see Dane County, I want to know where Fitchburg stands.
Yeah, so they're a separate entity than Dane County, but they have to follow all of our building codes and guidelines and regulations and rules. So they can't supersede what we have and do something that we don't have and approve. They have to follow our
So
rules.
we have the power to correct things or do it Fitchburg's way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And like I said, if they, for some reason, aren't following that, we can say, you guys are out of here then. We don't want you working here. Yeah, Lee?
Has that ever happened? So from my position, I like it. To me, it's improving housing that's maybe needs a little loving to it. But I don't have any experience with it overall. I'd look maybe Tom or Ed. I mean, what's been you guys' experience with the Housing Commission over your period of time? They've never been here, I guess, but
never
you've got to
worked
have other
with them,
stories or.
I don't know of any other municipality that's not had them and kicked them out, or had them and then kicked them out. I don't know if, you worked with them in Monona, I think. I don't
Right,
know if you
Monona
did a whole lot.
authorized them. I was there for 7 years, Pat a little bit longer before me. And if this speaks to anything, the entire time that I was there, it was never an issue. So the housing units that they owned were not, generating complaints or anything along those lines. So they were also scattered sites throughout the community, which was something that some of the people in Monona definitely recognized as a good component to affordable housing, as opposed to isolating or concentrating large groups. They purchased units that were scattered throughout the community.
Sure.
Anyone else? Someone like to do a motion then?
Resolution R 2620. Do we need to have an amendment? There's no
No conditions.
conditions, right? Yeah.
Is that, Sony, is that the amended version that the Housing Committee amended?
Right, it
There's
does,
an
it does
Okay.
include the phrase that, regarding
Okay, great,
a pilot.
perfect. All right,
So I make a motion to approve Resolution R 2620.
is there a second?
Second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Excellent. All right, next up is early issuance of permits. And do you want to speak to this, Sonia?
Sure. This is early issuance of permits for the dairy or juice plant redevelopment project in Venture Capital's 3101 Fish Hatchery Road. This would allow permits to be issued for early start permits, and as well as full vertical building permits and zoning permits for that redevelopment project prior to acceptance of public improvements. The typical process is that the Bowman Drive public improvements and all of the utilities, et cetera, would need to be completed and accepted by the city council before we allow construction to proceed. But the land division ordinance does allow for the plan commission to issue the permits in advance if a variety of conditions are met. So in this case, we look at, public safety, so water access is available in Fish Hatchery Road. Fire access and public safety access would be maintained. And then we do have a recommended list of conditions, 1 through 8, that sort of just codifies all of those issues that we talk about, making sure that any fire lanes are covered, and if they're trenched, we make sure that those are not left open overnight for safety reasons, things like that. And then we also require that the developer indemnify and hold the city harmless for any negative consequences that might come out of our issuing the permit early, and then we also restrict occupancy until those public improvements are done and accepted.
Questions on this at all? Seeing none. Oh, Ed.
I'll move approval with the conditions as noted.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of approving, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. All right, next up, Sonia.
This is another early issuance of permits request, and this time it's over in the Uptown neighborhood. This is one of Avante's upcoming projects along Lacey Road, and the public improvements involved in this project are related to that public passage we've been talking about at some of our recent meetings that they needed to go and vacate when they replatted the 6th addition to Nine Springs. So really, really minor public improvements. All of the public safety requirements are met. Indemnification, occupancy limitations still apply. The same conditions are recommended.
All right,
I'll make a motion to approve the early issuance of permits, Lot 2 CSM 14998, with the 8 staff conditions.
all right, seconded by Lane. I should just check if there's any other questions, since we didn't have any comments or questions.
I got
All right, you got some corned beef and cabbage you want to get to. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, that is approved. Next up is the vertical storage again. We've seen this in the past. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I've got, my agenda is different than the,
Adams Road.
sorry, yeah, Purcell, Adams Road is the next thing.
All right, so we're on 5D.
Yeah.
We have the certified survey map for the rural land division request. This was before us in January and February and was tabled. The applicant had been requesting throughout this entire time the history of tillage, so that waiver still applies. It's not something that's been a concern of any of the committees in the past discussions. The other waiver, as you know, that was a point of contention was the infill waiver, that they need to be within 300 feet of the nearest residence. They did come back and revise the application. So the lot used to be located more in the middle of the existing parent parcel, and now it is hugging the eastern property line and measures within that 300-foot requirement from the nearest residential property line. It does extend a little bit further, and I think this is something that came up at Ag and Rural Affairs, so feel free to jump in if you'd like, Ed. But it's a little bit more than 300 feet, I believe, from the actual residence, the building on that property. But due to the configuration of that lot and the siting of that house, it's a little bit unusual. It's located way at the back end of a long lot. So I think in the future, we really want to make sure that we're measuring it from the actual residence, the home, but in this case, the measurement was taken from the property line to accommodate that.
So my understanding, and I didn't go out there and look at this, but I understood that a couple of people had, is that there's another residence closer to the road, that this is actually within the 300, this home site would be within 300 feet of that one.
Right.
And if measured from that one, there's no waiver needed. Is that correct?
It's not something I was able to confirm. I can bring it up here. It must be on the adjacent parcel, one more to the east.
I think so. Yeah.
It's something that Wade did say was correct,
Okay.
so.
Because that would be one thing that I would want to make certain that we're consistent in how we measure this. And this was a concern at Ag and Rural too, that we're actually measuring from residence to residence and not to the lot line. But my understanding is this does meet that, and I would want to clarify condition number 6 to the CSM to make it clear that it's, measured, that it's within 300 feet, that the residence is within 300 feet of the nearest residence. And I'm told it meets that.
Right. Wade did confirm that, if that gives you all comfort. Wade Thompson in the planning department. It's something that I'm trying to load here, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to bring it up in the meantime.
And Ed, I know, unfortunately, Ag and Rural Affairs didn't meet today for everything, because of everything else going on. And it seems like they finally addressed the concerns based on this here. If this is within the 300 feet, do you think that otherwise that they're fine now?
I think so. I mean, I can't speak for the committee because we didn't meet, but the concerns that have been addressed, that had been raised, have been addressed. And that's a particular waiver that, well, really, you don't want to provide any waivers that aren't necessary.
Right.
And it really wasn't necessary. This was a situation where that requirement could be met very reasonably, and they've done that, so.
I would also just point out, looking at just overhead view here, satellite view of it, so that other house is actually, the driveway though is going to be right next, adjacent to this property that we're talking about, the lot 2. So actually, even though the houses are not within 300 feet, it looks very natural. You're going to have a house right next to a driveway,
Right.
an existing driveway or access road. So
It's still clustering the residential uses
Right.
together, which is the intent.
the intent of the whole thing. So, yep, it looks good to me.
Other questions on the CSM? Ed?
I'll move approval of CS 2330-20 with the 11 conditions as noted by staff, with number 6 clarified that the residents must be within 300 feet of the nearest residence.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. All right, then on H, it's really the same property, but we do have a public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing. There is no one here from the public today. They're staying home like they should be, and I didn't get any written comments either on this piece. So seeing nothing, I will close the public hearing. Is there anything additional on this, Sonia?
This would allow the residential lot to be rezoned from exclusive agriculture to RR, rural residential zoning, which is standard. Recommendation is for approval with 3 conditions.
So moved.
All right, moved by Ed, seconded by Lane. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, and that is also approved. All right, next up is ADR for vertical storage. Sonia, do you want to?
Sure. So this is a modification to the architectural design review approval for the vertical storage project off of Verona Road that we've approved and looked at multiple times here at the Plan Commission and the Common Council level. And the changes include just some parts to the building design that need to come back in front of the Plan Commission. So first was a minor change. The color, the accent panels on the project were changed from a dark gray to blue. No staff concerns there. They did add 6 additional storage units at the ground level along the south elevation. After they did more detailed grading, they found that they were able to fit some more in at the ground level. And the more substantial change was some removal of windows from the east elevation. So this is the elevation that faces back into other private properties and does not face on the public frontage. I can bring up an image in a minute if it helps. But they did have a series of windows there. After their architect did some more detailed internal layouts, they found that one of the structural components to the building conflicted with the alignment of the windows. So they decided to remove those windows, and instead they changed all of the overhead garage doors to glass. So they did still maintain some of that glazing to sort of help with the architectural appeal, but instead of being in windows, it's now in the garage doors.
So it's not going to be like, well, this isn't U-Haul, but a big orange door or something like that.
Right, I think the doors being glass does help.
The one thing I wasn't clear looking at the plans, these new spots that they want, I think, are on the outside wall. I couldn't tell for sure where they were on which wall when I was looking at the plans. It wasn't clear
It's
to
the
me.
south elevation, as they've described it, which is this building facade here on the lower left.
And so if I was, I think a couple pages after that, or the overhead. So it's the bottom
Down here.
one? Okay.
So again, not fronting on the public roadway.
I think Saris is to that south, right? South of them, so that's also kind of hiding that a little bit. Okay. Is there anything else you had, Sonia? Any questions, other questions from people?
I just wish that we actually had some images, I guess, of what it was and what it's proposed to now, because I'm not really putting together what we approved back how many months ago, and now trying to figure out, is it substantially similar or not? thinking more so for the glass, and I don't care about the color, but the amount of changes there.
I don't have the previously approved image handy. I believe the windows that were removed were here on the east elevation.
And then what, are the doors then those lower left ones, or you're saying the doors are on the south?
These are the overhead doors that he must be referring to.
Got it.
Yep.
Can you show the west elevation again?
And so if the windows were on the east side of the building, that would have been the opposite side of Verona Road, essentially.
Yeah.
So no one would have seen those.
So it seems like initially they were maybe more for the purpose of letting light into the building than necessarily for aesthetics for public view.
Okay. All right.
Further questions? All right, does someone want to do a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ADR for 5237 Verona Road with the 2 staff recommendations, your conditions.
Second.
All right, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. All right, that one is approved, and then this is also dealing with the same thing, but signage.
This item, I'll just bring this item is the same project, and it's a request for a minor modification to their approved plan development district zoning, specific implementation plan, and the changes specifically in regard to signage. At the time of approval, they were approved for their own specific signage plan that would have allowed up to 530 square feet on the building, including the monument sign, I believe, and now the applicant is requesting 562 square feet of signage.
And I was a little confused, and maybe it was just a typo in your staff memo because it said the requested modification will allow 632 square feet. An increase of 93 square feet from the north elevation side.
So that total is after adding the monument sign. So
Okay.
the staff report is correct. It takes this signage schedule here on the screen, which makes a total of all of the building signage at 562. And then the monument signage is an additional right here.
But it does say in the staff memo that the original 535 included the ground sign as well. So I guess I was having a hard time figuring out if it was 30 extra feet or 93 extra feet, square feet. And why, if it's 93 square feet, that seems like a big jump.
Sure. It is an increase of 93. So it's 535 square feet, including the ground sign in the original approval.
And I wasn't sure why they needed to increase it by so much.
What is our typical signage limit currently at?
150 square feet per business.
So they're
So this would exceed
by a lot
substantially.
already.
And they want another 93, which is almost what they're supposed to have with 150. So it's kind of like,
So the significant variance from the 150, is a product of PDD, is that correct? I mean, is that just kind of a waiver that was provided as
Right.
part of PDD zoning?
With the PDD zoning, it's not necessarily a waiver since you can create your own signage standard. So you're not asking for any specific variances due to property conditions or anything like that. You're creating your own whole entire separate specific signage plan. So at the time we approved this, whenever it was a year ago approximately, we did approve the 535 or whatever it was square feet. When I spoke to the applicant earlier this morning, unfortunately it would be helpful if he was here to describe this in a little bit more detail for us. Of course, he's in Colorado and didn't fly here, so that's fine. He said that they just shifted some of the square footage around and then also accounted for that monument sign. So I can't provide any more justification on their behalf as to where the additional 90 square footage came from. It appears that it was really in that northern elevation sign. So in looking at the application, the signage in general does appear to scale with the building. It doesn't look like it's oversigned. I think a lot of the additional signage that makes up the total also helps identify various different components of the building, and it is a large building. So for some other projects that are similar, like Hy-Vee, I know has a lot of different entrances and directional signage and things like that. So there are some projects where we've allowed greater signage. And in looking at this, in my opinion, the signage does look appropriate. You have an office sign as well as a building identifier on one wall on the east. You have the drive-through identifier on the north with the main building identifier and the loading directional sign. On the west elevation, you have that primary sort of road frontage signage, and then on the south, another identifier.
So looking back at the old one, it looks like all of the signs just got bigger. So it was like the north elevation was 19 feet by 5 feet 3 inches. If you go up to the north elevation, the kind of the middle sign that has their name, and now it's 28 by 5. So that sign got about 9 feet wider, and it kind of holds the same for all of those signs. So I think that's where we're seeing the fairly major increase.
Because I mean, I agree that there needs, especially for something like this, you need to have some directional signage so people know where to go, because there's a lot of traffic and a lot of areas you can go in and out. But I'm concerned that it was already pretty far over, and they want another 93 feet, and it's not really clear why, except they just want a bigger billboard on Verona Road. I guess I'd be okay with postponing it to try and get a little more clarification, but I'm not, I guess at this point, I wouldn't be I don't know that I would support this without knowing more information, but that's one person.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing here. You're talking 30 feet on the south wide, 30 on the west, and 28 on the north. That just feels like over. I mean, those are big signs. I get it's a big building, and I totally agree with the site marking ones. But for the logo to be, you've got collectively 90 feet of logo. I think we can understand that it's a self-storage. So I would prefer that we postpone it, table this till next month, and we can have someone speak to it or have them redo it.
I think it's going to be really difficult to enforce our signage ordinance elsewhere when, if we just give this project everything it wants, it's, it's way over as it is.
So are you suggesting just straight deny this request, or postpone and try and get more information?
I can't imagine that there's really any material justification for making this bigger, other than that they believe that they can, and anyone would take as large a sign as they could possibly get if they could get it, I guess. So I would be more inclined just to put this one to bed, but.
Other people want to weigh in? Wayne?
Part of me is like, if it's 150 and he's already over, what's another 93, but I get it, we've laid a precedence there, and I don't want to set a precedence by any means, so I tend to agree with Ed. Can they reapply if that was a big enough deal to them?
We could reconsider.
Or should we just table it until next month when they have an opportunity to be here?
Well, then they,
Maybe have an opportunity.
Right?
I guess you'd have to think that there was going to be a good enough reason to say yes, because otherwise you're dragging them in for this
Right.
and adding an agenda item. It seems unlikely to me that we're going to have any additional information that would make a difference, unless someone very strongly feels otherwise.
I would agree with you, Ed. Yeah, numbers 150 gave you 500 and some. You don't need another 100 and some. The placements are all there. The directionals are all there. They just wanted more size. I'm not necessarily opposed to more size either, but there's a rule, and I don't want to set a precedence for breaking a rule. And I don't think there's a reason to break it. Like, there's nothing else in that gray building except the sign. So, I mean, it's going to be clear as a bell, in my opinion.
So, someone want to do a motion? Yeah, Tom, yeah.
You seem so far away from me.
Move to postpone until another meeting and let the applicant come in and speak for himself. And, I guess the first thing that jumps out at me is staff didn't see anything wrong with it. And a lot of you like to rely on staff, which I do too. There's no red flag is what I'm saying. So why not just postpone it? And if he can't come next month, he'll have to come it's up to him when he can get here. Or maybe we can
I don't see this as
have it
being-
done another way, that's fine.
Yeah. I don't see this as being a critical issue. I mean, if they start building it, this is one of the last things that goes on. So I would think they've got a little time.
If they don't want to come back, they can withdraw as well.
Yeah.
As long as we, kind of note some of the concerns, in the minutes so that they have that available to them and they may just decide they don't want to press the issue.
Right, and in regards to the mayor's comments, there may be some discrepancies here in the staff report, and I don't want to be the reason for not explaining it correctly on their behalf. So if that's any reason for tabling and giving them another opportunity to consider.
That's fine. Yeah, that's cool.
And I move to table this ADR,
If you can just say postpone.
or postpone, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Tom. All in favor of postponing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then it's postponed for now. All right, next up is hospice. And we have a public hearing for that. I will open the public hearing for this rezone request. There is still no one here from the public. Hopefully they're watching from home. And so seeing nothing, I will close the public hearing. And Sonia, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. A Grace Hospice located on East Sherrill Parkway has Planned Development District zoning, so PDD zoning. At this time, they're looking to add 13 more parking stalls on the excuse me, far east end of the site along the new Fahey Glen extension. With the addition of these 13 parking stalls, they would be able to still meet all of their stormwater and erosion control requirements. They're not removing any old growth trees. I know there are a lot of oak savanna sort of landscape features out in that area. So really the concern here is just procedurally, it's going back through, back to the original GIP that was approved in 2004. So that ordinance had a number of conditions. Usually the general implementation plan is supposed to be exactly that, general and sort of big picture, where the specific implementation plan really gets to the finer details like exact number of parking stalls, impervious surface, all of those types of details. But in this case, in 2004, the GIP specifically limited the site to 270 stalls. So because this is an increase and it's inconsistent with that ordinance adopted by the city, we do need to go back through and treat this as if it were sort of being rezoned through the PDD process. So that's what this would do. In reviewing the file, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any specific reason for that level of specificity in the GIP, and we really didn't find any. It appeared to just sort of copy what was proposed into that GIP ordinance. So again, no concerns from a stormwater perspective. The applicant also did reach out to neighbors. Promega provided something for the file that they're in support of this. So it's really procedurally going back through that process.
Yeah, I guess for me, 2004 is a long time ago, and I think the building's gotten a lot bigger since then, and probably even beyond what they originally expected. I know a lot of people right now park in the street, which isn't ideal. And also, there's also a second entrance that will be added to their parking lot off of the extension of Fahey Glen, which is going to get finished up this spring, which I think is great and going to be awesome because when special events happen on East Sherrill, it gets difficult to get into hospice, and this will prevent that. So I guess I don't see any issues with that, but that's one person. Others?
As I say, I mean, I used to live off East Sherrill, and it was always packed with cars, so any help with that would be good. I mean, sometimes it felt like people couldn't see, because coming from Promega, it kind of curves around that way, so anyone turning out of that second further turn lane had a hard time seeing out, so hopefully that can help with this.
Rich?
It seems to fit. There's the extra parking is just at the edge of the current parking, so I'm good.
Zach, is that parking situation, have you noticed, has it improved since Promega put up that parking structure?
You know, I don't know. We don't live off of there anymore,
Oh.
so we're not over there that often, so I couldn't say for sure.
Well, in the last
Yeah.
year and a half, they've had the construction
Yeah.
limiting parking on that street too. So that's kind of screwed everything
Right.
up a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting just with Promega expanding too. Hopefully they have enough spots.
Yeah. Other questions, concerns, comments? All right, someone want to do a motion?
I'll move to approve the rezone request RZ 2339-20 with the staff, the 5 staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, that one is approved. All right, another conditional use permit request. And I'll do the public hearing, open the public hearing for this one. Pat, do you want to say anything? All right, our one. Thank you. All right, seeing nothing, I will close the public hearing. And do you want to tell us more about this, Sonia?
Sure, the applicant's requesting a conditional use permit. The conditional use is a used merchandise store or a secondhand retail store within the RD, Rural Development Zoning District. The property is located near the Fitchburg Dog Park at Fish Hatchery Road and Irish Lane. The applicant provided a little bit of information stating that they buy out storage units for collectibles and things like that. So it's a typical sort of retail goods, secondhand store operation. So no concerns were identified by any other departments. City clerk and police department also reviewed our requirements for secondhand dealers' licenses, which wouldn't apply in this case. So the recommendation then is for approval with no conditions listed. One thing that we would look at in cases like this is parking. The space is so small, and there is adequate parking on that site, so again, no concerns.
This is in the space right next to the greenhouse where the grocery store used to be?
Yeah, it's the same building. It's the opposite side of the greenhouse in that building. I think there's one or two other.
Oh, the
businesses
far
there.
end from the
It's
greenhouse,
end.
on the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think when I saw it, my only question was, this is a pawn shop, but it sounds like it's not a pawn shop. It's really buying goods from something like going on a business sale and selling them. Okay.
You don't want a pawn shop there?
Well, I don't want a pawn shop anywhere.
It's probably closer to like an antiques store or something similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
This could be anything.
yeah.
We really don't know.
Other questions, comments? No? Motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll move approval of conditional use 2340-20 with 6 conditions as noted by staff.
Oh, I think there's no conditions on this
Right.
one.
No conditions.
Oh, I got it, yes, those are the, okay. Yes, thank you.
All right, with no conditions.
No conditions.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, that is approved. Next up is Terra Vesa. Do you want to speak to this, Sonia?
So the last 3 items we have here are all Public Works-related resolutions. The first one, item J, is a resolution that would approve an affidavit of correction to the Terra Vesa plat. So on the recorded final plat, it has limitations at the corners that would require restricted vision triangle of 25 feet from each street to prohibit any structures in those corners that would obscure vision. The developer has agreed to put stop signs at those intersections, so that then would allow them to reduce the vision corners down to 12 feet. So this has been recommended for approval by Public Works staff and planning staff.
Questions at all?
Do we know what the speed limit is on those roads? Or will we?
I
Assuming-
don't know, they're very narrow local streets, so 25 or less.
Okay.
It's neighborhood, so I've guessed 25, maybe 30, but probably 25. Tom?
Are these the streets by the garages? Is that what I'm thinking, along the backside maybe? Or,
They're not the alleys.
they're not the alleys, are they?
No.
Are they the regular streets?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's fine.
then right east to west off Lacey, right?
It's within the Terra Vesta plat, so they don't front on Lacey.
Right. Yeah, so those got to be 25 or less. I mean, they're neighborhood streets, right by parks and whatnot.
Correct. They're the internal local residential streets to the development. So they're not even the main thoroughfares within the Terra Vesta plat, like Lacey Road and Brassica. These are the, spinach, arugula, whatever they might be. They're the ones that are really internal to those residential neighborhoods. So the stop signs would be located off of those smaller streets as the vehicles enter the more main thoroughfare within
Seems
the
safer
neighborhood.
too.
I think I'm fine as long as we replace spinach and arugula with Heller, Tate, Billings. Something's got to be better than that.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve Resolution 42-20.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, that's approved.
Before we go, who set the limitation at 25 feet?
Smart code zoning, probably.
Or a public works safety requirement.
Like
If
a
you don't have
general one?
That's how I understand it. If there were no stop signs, they want to make sure that the vision triangle is larger so that you can see clearly as you're pulling up.
The
with
rolling,
stop signs.
okay, got it.
Yep,
And then you put a stop sign, one side turns to got it.
yep.
All right. I think we talked about this last week too, or last month, but you want to speak to this one, Sonia? On K Resolution R 5320?
Sure, so this is regarding the Stoner Prairie plat, so over on the other side of town, on the west side of Fitchburg. This would release easements within Outlot 6 of the first addition to Stoner Prairie. So in other words, the area where Outlot 6 would be replatted then with the second addition to Stoner Prairie, so that next round of William Ryan homes that's coming in with the subdivision. Once the plat is recorded, the easements are no longer needed, so it's really just simply releasing those easements because they're no longer required.
No bookkeeping. Make a motion to approve Resolution R 5320.
Second.
Second by Steven. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, that's approved. All right, last one.
And this area, this resolution affects easements along the Fahey Glen extension between East Sherrill Parkway and Lacey Road, so between the developments of Promega and the Fahey subdivisions. And this also would approve easements for the things noted. So public sidewalk, public sanitary sewer easement, public bike path easement, and stormwater easement in that area.
Any questions?
I move to approve Resolution 54-20.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, that is approved. Report from departments, Sonia?
The only thing I want to add is that the Common Council did approve the comprehensive plan. So with all of the news of the coronavirus going around lately, I think we've sort of forgotten all about our comp plan efforts over the last few months. But that was approved by the Common Council on March 10th. There were a whole slew of modifications. A lot of them were relatively minor, just adding things that were generally consistent with the rest of the plan, such as phrases like maintaining affordability in housing when we're considering redevelopment projects. The one of probably most interest to the Plan Commission is the Plan Commission versus Common Council authority on minor amendments. And that did change, I think it was a vote of 5-2 of members present to side with the original Common Council resolution. That council can essentially trump a Plan Commission recommendation on minor amendments to the comp plan. So that was, I think, the most substantial change out of that March 10th approval. Anything else
Probably
to add?
the only other thing would be okaying when you're doing a neighborhood plan for high density, having different levels of high density. Because right now, if it's high density, it can be anything to up to 100 per square foot or per block, whatever. And so enabling when someone's doing a neighborhood plan to say, well, this is high density, but up to 50 units or 15 or whatever you might want to be. So enabling that flexibility so that, again, there's a little bit more certainty for the residents as they're building that neighborhood plan and having an idea of what's going to be put up there.
So is the idea there to create an additional layer, an additional zoning category?
probably.
It clarifies that that can occur within
Okay.
any future neighborhood plan. And it's also not unlike anything we have now. So in North Stoner Prairie and McGaw, they both contain different ways to define high-density residential differently than the general comp plan does. Or the North Stoner Prairie, for example, defines medium-density residential in a different way than our general comp plan does. So we already kind of take that more specific approach within the neighborhood plans. This just clarifies that that could happen if the neighborhood plan chooses to identify a category of 9 to 15 dwelling units per acre, and then a separate one of 15 and above. That would just give the residents more predictability as well as developers in knowing what's expected, rather than someone coming in, for example, with a 60 dwelling unit per acre project that's still HDR and complies, but it's way more than the 9 limit. So this is something that was discussed by the Plan Commission, I think, a year and a half ago or so, but it didn't get a lot of attention specifically throughout the comp plan process. So that was added in by amendment from Alder Julia Radafrada.
Anything else from the department? All right, for announcements, a few things. One is, I'm not sure if we'll meet next month, or maybe even the month after that, or when we'll meet again. Today, the governor said you're not supposed to have groups of 10 or more, and so we can still meet. We want, it's important to get feedback, but it depends on what it is. If it's some of these things on here that's really just cleaning up stuff, then we're going to ask the council next Tuesday to give myself the authority to approve that with the city administrator and the department head. So if there's bigger things, we might meet. It's kind of to be determined. I think every day coronavirus changes and what's happening changes. So it's hard to really say, but I do know that it sounds like Lane's homeschooling is not going well based on Facebook. So Lane might want to come regardless. He's going to tell his wife there's a meeting regardless.
I'll risk it, right?
And then I think just want to keep you informed that roughly April 1st, they expect to start on Fish Hatchery Road, and that's what we're hearing from builders and developers, and why we might need to continue a meeting depending on what it is that right now we're hearing from builders and developers that road construction is still happening, building construction is still happening. They're not slowing down because of coronavirus. They're mainly working outside and not in groups, and they got a lot to do, so they're not planning to slow down right now. So, that's good, I think. Other than that, the other thing is, if you would like, our city clerks have been working really hard with the voting, election stuff, and so we did get a bunch of pizza for them. There's a bunch left over. If you would like any, a traditional St. Patrick's Day food, Pizza Hut. But we have that behind the front desk, so you're welcome to some of that as well.
Is there any option for video collaboration for our meetings?
So we're working on that. We don't know, we don't have the technology right now. We're looking into options and seeing what we can do that people can look at it. You can know who's saying what, and then we can also record it and keep it.
Yeah, that's the key.
And
The space.
that's a big piece as well. So we're working on something like that, and so that might be an option as well, is
Yeah.
to do some kind of a virtual meeting.
I think we have to get up with the rest of the world, because the university, they were told a couple weeks back that everything has to be delivered digitally. They have to be able to communicate. They have to have dialogues or whatever. I think as a city that we need to
It's
really
there, it's
look
just if you
hard
have
at
the
that.
infrastructure for it.
Or-
I get it.
The concern is just with things like the open meetings law and making sure that we're following that, and we have a little more restrictions. So we're looking at something right now and trying to find something that will meet those requirements so that we can do that in the future.
And the League of Wisconsin Municipalities has been right on top of that as well. So we're not the only ones kind of considering what the law would allow.
Yeah. I would imagine before our next meeting, we would know if we have something or not and what we can do. So it's definitely a possibility. Hazmat suits, yeah, exactly. Any other questions at all?
Just one other thing I wanted to note. So the Ag and Rural meeting, which would have been today at 4:00, was canceled. The other thing that had been on the agenda was a public listening session. So that is not canceled, it's postponed. When it's postponed to, I don't know. But for anyone who is interested, we will have that at some point later on this year.
Good. All right.
Just to finish up the comp plan, item 2, for anybody in the public that may be listening, hasn't been posted on the website yet in its final form after all of the Common Council amendments, but staff will be working to get that accomplished remotely and posted online, and we can send out a detailed update to all of the Plan Commission as well when that's done.
Yeah, I will say, just for you guys to know in the public, most staff is working from home now. And so this building is pretty empty now, and we're encouraging anyone that can stay home to stay home. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.